how do we optimize resource use today, especially natural resources, so that we don't jeopardize the usage of those resources for future in future generation. Right? It's all about thinking about the future when we make production decisions, consumption decisions, etc. Who is responsible for sustainable development, right? If you're asked, if you do a popular poll, people on the street, people might tell you it's government, right? But here, almost everyone agrees that it's a collective endeavor. It's governments, the private sector, civil society, and the general public, right? Extremely important that all these actors play together. For example, in Belize, a country that prides itself on conservation, we can't get that conservation done without civil society, for example, all the NGOs that support efforts to protect wildlife, to protect our coral reefs, to protect our natural resources. Similarly, something like financial inclusion, which is such a complex issue, will not be solved by government alone, right? The government can, help in terms of the enabling framework. Remember the pyramid we spoke about yesterday? We can collectively, as a people, look into relaxing certain norms and destroying certain barriers internally, collectively, right? These things take time, but again, it won't happen, in a vacuum. Everyone has to be on board, and that's the only way we can achieve sustainable development. In terms of what is financial inclusion, right? Defined as a process of ensuring access to financial services and timely and adequate credit where needed, right? By the people who need it, right? And that's the yellow, the gold shaded portion here. 2/3 of the class, agree that that's the definition of financial inclusion. That's perfectly right. Again, we spoke about needs, right? You have to be suited to the needs of the people. The needs of someone in Florida, for example, and someone in the difference. The needs of someone in Florida is totally different, for example, than the needs of someone in Kentucky in the U.S. And same thing in Belize. Someone's needs in Toledo is different than someone's needs in Orange Rock, in Cayo, right? So it's all about how we tailor products and services to the needs of our customers, right? And that's what financial inclusion speaks to. Ensuring access to these financial services, providing lines of credit, but again, tailored to the needs of the people. In Belize, for example, we spoke about micro, small, medium entrepreneurs. A 2016 survey done by the SIB found that roughly 75% of our businesses were MSMEs. Again, if you design products and services that don't tailor to those needs, well, you're locking out 75% of the entrepreneurs in this country. So it's important to always keep that in mind. What are the benefits, right? Bring in more and more customers to the bank, potentially increasing the business of the banks. Helps to improve the standard of living of the majority of people. Bridges the gap between rural people and urban people. Strong consumer protection, all of the above, right? Financial inclusion addresses every single one of these issues, right? From a private sector perspective, you have more depositors. You have more people doing transactions. You collect more transaction fees, right? You broaden the access to your products and services. You help to improve the standard of living of the majority of people, right? A little quick fact. In India, coins, the rupee coins actually have the symbols for 1 rupee at thumb 2, 3. Why? Because a large majority of the population can't read or write. So the Indian government said, well, let's show it graphically on the coin so that they know this is 1, 2, 3, right? And that's an example of how financial inclusion, that is a means of including more and more people financially. That's how you help improve the standard of living for people, right? You bridge the gap between rural and urban people, right? Rural people who have traditionally, everywhere in the world, not only in Belize, have had a difficult time accessing financial products and services when they're far from city centers, far from big cities, right? You bridge that gap, right? You could send money wirelessly, you could send it on your phone, you can send it in a matter of minutes, seconds often, right? And then strong consumer protection, right? When you are able to transact, especially through cashless transactions, you protect the consumer, right? There are ways to maybe dispute settlements. There are ways to track progress. It helps people manage their finances much better when you're able to go into an app and see the history of your purchases. As a matter of fact, some bank apps, even in the US, develop cash flow statements now. I was shown one not too long ago. They develop cash flow statements of what you've been spending, what you've been getting in terms of deposits, etc. right? So it helps someone internalize financial awareness and just in general how to manage their budget and their finances. So what proportion of the Belizean population has a bank account? And this is the one where we see the most variation, right, out of all the questions, right? And it was open-ended. You could put whatever you wanted. We see that about 11% of the attendees found that 75%, thought that 75% of the Belizean population has a bank account. Actually, it's 67%, if I'm not mistaken, from the last financial inclusion survey. 16.7% of the class thought as low as 50%. We're not that bad. You know, we're doing a bit better than that. But there's still work to do, right? And you have to also remember, keep in mind that the financial inclusion survey, like any survey, has a clear limitation, is that it doesn't access everyone. So we could be understating, we could actually be overstating, right? Financial access, financial inclusion in Belize. But it's good to see the variety of opinions on this topic, right? Because in much the same way that here we as individuals might have ideas on what financial inclusion looks like, policymakers, no different than ourselves, have their own ideas. And if they think that financial inclusion is great, well, there's no intensity, there's no desire to push in that direction, right? When we asked what proportion of the Belizean female population has a bank account, we see on average that the responses were on the low side, right? 16.7% of people thought that it was around 40 and 53 between there, right? It's actually around, if I recall correctly, 63 or something of the sort from the financial inclusion survey. Men were at about 70. I remember we discussed that slide yesterday, right? So again, we're not doing great, but there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of financial inclusion for men. And again, that survey, that limitation that we don't access everyone. If we look at reports from the SIB, we see that a lot of women actually live in rural areas. In Toledo, in Stan Creek, a lot of these women are the sole breadwinners, small farmers, homemakers. Are we accessing those people when we do a survey? Those people might not have access to financial services and products, so we may very well be understating what financial inclusion looks like. So these are all important things to keep in mind moving forward, right? Especially as we talk more about data, we'll go into that in much more detail in day 4. When we think about data, we have to think about all these things. How do we make our surveys representative, right? Because the Belizean context is not the concept in Florida, for example, the US, where you could in one city sample 20,000 people, right? To get 20,000 people in a survey in Belize, you might have to be all over the place, and you might have to be aware that some people live in remote places, right? All good things to keep in mind. So by the end of the day, we'll post another quick quiz, 5 to 7 questions on today's topics. So you could test your knowledge and awareness on some of the things we'll discuss today. And you could always, and we'll be posting the results as well, so you can go onto the website and see.
Sorry, maybe I missed it, but do we actually have a percentage for male and female?
Yes, in Belize, on the financial inclusion survey.
So what is it? I missed it. So. You don't, it's okay if you don't know.
Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was around 70 male and about 63 female, but don't, yeah, I don't remember exactly. We do have the financial inclusion survey posted on the website, so you can go onto the website and click it and see for yourself. And we do have the slides from yesterday. Sure. Good question. Yeah. Okay. With that now, we'll go into the presentation. Again, all about the demand side barriers today. Our colleague Simran will actually be presenting remotely. We hope you have a good time, and thank you again for being here.
Ready? Okay.
Yeah, we could hear you. I might have to maximize that.
So are you going to the internet? I'm not sure.
Small.
Yes.
I like
You see his name on the,
Yep.
you see his name on the credits.
I like to flip through the slides on it. This one.
When the podcast, doing podcast will start?
Well, we wanted to start by latest when we start the same week when we went so. So I know if I don't think that.
Hello?
Because
Yes,
one
I
of
can
those
hear you.
shows will be
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
No,
Not the student.
not the student one.
Wanted to
With
be
student.
light and more fun.
More fun.
Yeah, and more hard and more hard than more hard. We try not to look on the
And you have,
one little bit light and engaging.
you have them go to the zoo to do the harpy and all that. That would be fun.
I make them
Hey,
kind
Sid,
of
can you hear me?
Exactly.
run it until
Yeah, I can hear you now.
but I wanted to
Okay.
like side sweeping.
You want to start
The
then?
next podcast coming up.
Yeah,
And
okay, sure.
Well, we've had our entrepreneurs and given our
The past, what next one?
huh?
Past.
Who?
Past.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not sure if you guys could see me or not, but welcome to the shop. For today, talking about barriers to really try to understand what are some of the bottlenecks and constraints. This intervention is to quality, the importance of sex from yesterday's session for some of you guys that weren't quiz, but just of financial inclusion, such as access, quality, and usage. So access in terms of physical access points and delivery channels, how easy it is to access, your financial service providers. What is the quality of like the financial and banking services in terms of suitability, affordability, transparency, and fairness, and also usage, so activity and customer engagement. And of course, all of these pillars are affected by the enabling environment, which is the infrastructure and social norms, which we will be speaking about today, and also education. So you guys spoke about, women financial inclusion from a Belize perspective and also from the Latin America and the Caribbean. And today we'll be talking about barriers to women financial inclusion, kind of from like a global perspective, but also more so with a focus on the current situation in Belize, but not only from a financial lens. Of course, please feel free to stop me if there are any questions or comments. So women financial inclusion in different dimensions. As I mentioned, we're gonna speak about it not just in terms of not in just the terms from like the financial lens, but also there are many aspects that shape, gender equality around the world. And in order to better understand context women are operating in Belize and the factors that do impact their empowerment and gender equality, we can start by examining the following dimensions. Which are legal, political, and regulatory environment, institutional capacity, social and cultural environment, and individual capabilities and resilience. Starting off with legal, political, and the regulatory environment. So some of the questions we're trying to answer in this is, what are the existing policies, laws, and regulations supporting or limiting women's rights and empowerment? The number of women leaders in parliament, what is corruption and harassment like, in the context of Belize, and how is women leadership being promoted in Belize? So starting off with existing policies, laws, and regulations. In terms of laws and regulations supporting or limiting women's right and empowerment, we have the Belize Domestic Violence Act. The Women's Commission of Belize, of course, is an instrumental figure in gender-responsive legislative reform and women's rights. There's the National Gender Policy, the Belize National Financial Inclusion Strategy, the United Nations Development Program that was guided to the creation of the 2017-2021 Country Program document, and also the amendment of the Criminal Code. So in order to promote gender equity, the United Nations Development Program guided the creation of the 2017-2021 Country Program document. And essentially, this document outlines a program that prioritizes the areas such as safety, sustainability, health, justice, and resilience. And then we also have the National Women's Commission of Belize, and they partner with organizations such as the Belize Crime Observatory, the Ministry of Human Development, and also provide a mandatory sentence of life in prison treatment and reporting of sex offenders. So, to an extent, there are certain policies, laws, and regulations supporting women's rights and empower. Are you guys still with me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Moving on to the political environment. So Belize is a democracy that has experienced regular rotations of power through competitive elections. Currently, there's no law that limits participation of women or members of minority groups in the political process. We can see that in the November 11 elections, 13 women candidates participated out of a total of 88. So this is still a minority because this only represents about 14% of women that participated in the political process. So to an extent, this does suggest that there is still cultural and societal constraints that does limit the number of women participating in government. We can clearly see that women still remain a clear minority in government. As of current, women hold 4 seats in the current House of Representatives and 5 seats in the Senate. It's actually 6 now, since Senator Chinona was recently sworn in. But still, this still shows that there is some underrepresentation of women in the political environment. And just something to kind of reflect on for you guys, this is somewhat an improvement, however, still insignificant. But is it that women lack awareness? Is it that they lack the confidence? Is it that they're intimidated? Or does it have to do with maybe voters' bias? Maybe voters don't see women fit? Or is it something about, just their mentality? Is it the party's bias? Or are women, simply less encouraged than males to take on such roles? These are some stats, data that I was able to pull from the UN Women Hub, and it speaks to the proportion of seats held by women in national parliament as a percentage of total number of seats. It's about 12.5%. In terms of proportion of elected seats held by women in deliberative bodies of local government, it's about 31%. And then this data is from 2020. In terms of proportion of women in managerial positions, it's about 51.1%, and proportion of women in senior middle management position is about 41.7%. Now, looking into corruption and harassment, this data was actually pulled from the Belize Crime Observatory, and I looked at the data for like the past maybe 5 years, and honestly, there hasn't been much difference or improvement at all. We can see that in the year 2020, domestic violence cases were about 773. Rape cases were 12, and female murdered were 11. And then when we look at the ratio or the comparison between males and females from the domestic violence report in 2021, we can see that about 8 in every 10 females were about 1,841, while men were 541. So we can see that there's still, a really, really big problem here. And then here, getting into the institutional capacity, I kind of wanted to open this part to a discussion. How is it that institutions are supporting and protecting women's rights and gender equality? Also, how much gender and social exclusion knowledge and awareness is available in service delivery institutions, both in the public and private sector. This is not limited to just, service delivery institutions such as health and education, but what are institutions currently doing, to bring across awareness and to support and protect women's rights within the organization itself? To what extent in the organization or institution do women have equal opportunities in the private sector? And then how much gender equality and social exclusion knowledge and capacity is there within the private sector? So I kind of wanted to open this to discussion and kind of hear from you guys. What are current institutions and organizations or your organization doing to protect women's rights and to bring across awareness? Oh yeah, sure. I was just asking, from you guys that are, in the room today, how are institutions, institutions that you're a part of or organizations that you are a part of, what are you guys doing to support and protect women's rights, and how are you guys bringing awareness across, within your organization?
We have in our handbook, which talks about it, a policy statement that equal opportunity is provided to everyone. And at orientation, we highlight it, but that's about the extent that we're doing. And I'm from the private sector.
Okay. Any other comments? I guess we similarly have a handbook, full HR policy and a gender policy that speaks about non-discrimination, zero tolerance for harassment, sexual and other types of harassment, and again, equal opportunities for male and females within the firm, so private sector perspective as well.
This was part of what we would be answering later, but at Galen University, in terms of support and protection for women's rights, we have a zero tolerance policy for sexual harassment. In fact, if we hear that there's been any incidences of sexual harassment, we immediately separate the harasser out of the institution, and then we investigate. So it's like it can happen within minutes. In terms of gender equality, we have almost an opposite situation. In fact, we have one male provost, and recently we hired we hired a student services person, female. And so everybody that in our institution just about are female. We have maybe a couple other males. And the male provost protested. He said this was an opportunity to have gender balance at the institution. And so we said, what do you mean? He said, this was an opportunity to hire another man. I'm tired of being the only male here. So so it also can work the opposite way. And there is some concern that perhaps we need to look at our institution at a little bit more of a balance in the male side, especially as it relates to male mentoring and male modeling and that sort of thing. So we have, as I said, almost an opposite situation. Oh yeah, we have a lot of adjuncts, male and female, but I was just talking about the full-time people that we have.
I believe that one of the major issues that we have, and this is based on our company doing quite a bit of gender studies for different sectors throughout the country, and I'm talking talking north, south, whatever. I mean, the reality is that gender awareness is something that not even the persons who are being surveyed even know what gender is even about. Nobody has had gender training to understand what gender implications are, what they affect. And so sometimes we go to them on a cold call speaking about gender when they have no reference, they have no context, they do not understand the United Nations definition of what gender is and how it impacts and how it affects. And they don't even know their organizational view upon gender and ethics and what so many organizations, and I think that that's one of the reasons why a lot of us feel stumped right now, is because we don't have a gender policy mainly in our organization. And until we take this to that level of seriousness where we do gender sensitization to every member of our team members, understanding what the context is, creating a gender policy for our organizations, and then spreading it into other organizations who we look forward to for capacity, whether it be the Chamber of Commerce's or the schools or whatever it is, or trade associations. The reality is that we're having a conversation without context, and that is where I think the problem really lies. And that makes it extremely difficult because right now we're talking gender in terms of women, but I think of gender on binary, non-binary, all other elements. And so I think that we're excluding a major grouping when we have a conversation slowly based on men or women. So that's really my position there.
And then that's why it becomes important that institutions have some kind of a gender program within the institution. At our institution, I was going to talk about this a little bit later on, we try to infuse gender across curriculum, and we're also being a bit more deliberate by introducing a gender and development program to the institution in September.
And the seriousness of this is because many of our programs and projects are being seen that we throw in gender because ICDF or Taiwan wants it there, or if I'll get grant funding from EU sources if I throw it in. It's an incidental that you toss in to become appropriate, not because it is actually valuable. And until that happens, then we will never have the shifts that I believe that you all are looking for.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of the points you guys have made from whatever I could hear. But I agree, a lot of times people aren't quite intentional with the way they approach it, because like you mentioned, they're just doing it just because they have some incentive behind it. But do they really understand the meaning behind it, or the value that it adds, not just to the country but to the economy as a whole? So that's definitely an issue. And I think some sort of gender training program. I mean, obviously it's nice, you start off with having a policy. Whenever I guess you go through that orientation process with people that start the company, you kind of walk them to the policy, but then what kind of happens after that? It stays in a closed book. So I think something too is to have a training, maybe once a year, just to familiarize yourself with the concept, and to not just teach it as a mere concept, but really, explain the importance and the value that it does add. That we do need to get to that point where, the gender gap is closed and it doesn't continue to persist. If there's no more comments, I will move on to the next slide. So getting into social and cultural environment, which is another dimension that we will be looking at today. How is it that social norms are contributing to gender inequality and women's social and financial inclusion? This also seeks to answer, how do social norms affect women's mobility and ability to link with others, their self-esteem and decision-making power, and what social and civil society support mechanisms and institutions might enable women to become empowered. For example, networks, social support systems for women and girls, civil society support to gender equality, and women empowerment. So we're going to be looking at the social and cultural environment from different aspects. First, just to kind of start off by talking about social norms. I'm sure like for you guys that attended yesterday's session, you might have spoke on social norms a bit, but just to kind of mention it again, social norms influence women's uptake, not just women's, because men are also subjected to social norms, but it affects the use of financial services and are one of the drivers of women financial inclusion. So, for example, like in Ghana, India, and Sri Lanka, there are expectations that men should earn more than women. And when I was also reading up, I saw that like in Uganda, for example, household dynamics plays a major role. So, if you're trying to go into the bank or whoever your financial service provider is, if you're trying to request for a loan or some sort of transactions with the bank, it plays a major role. Like if you're married, if you're divorced, like they really profile you in that sense, I guess. So that was actually quite interesting to know. But the example I found was like a woman, trying to walk into the bank. She's divorced. She has 2 kids, and she's not able to access financial services that she and everyone else do deserve. Another example is in Turkey, women should not hold assets in their own name or even businesses in their own name. And actually, something really interesting that came up, I was talking to one of my professors that teaches a leadership class, and he did mention that, like, in one of their classes, they were talking about this case in India, this company called Royal DSM. And with the pandemic, they had all kind of like, transitioned to the work from home. And, it's more focused on the pandemic, but he brought up like a really good point when I was talking to him about, I told him about the training, the workshop that was coming up. And he was like, men are also subject to social norms. And yeah, I completely agree. And the reason he said this is because in the case that he was referring to, the company that they're working for, there's a husband and a wife at home. And the wife continues to work in person throughout the pandemic. However, the husband has to stay at home and work. He's still employed, mind me, like he still has a job. But society believes that the man is supposed to be out there and working. And the fact that he's at home working and his wife's going out to like her job, like she's not remote, she's still going out. People, or I guess society, are under the impression that he's no longer the breadwinner because he's staying at home. While he still has a job, they just don't see him leaving his house or see him leaving to commute for work. They just assume that he's no longer working and only his wife's still working while both of them still have a job. So, there's social norms around men having to be the providers of the family. And while he still is, it has to do, I guess, with society and the perception. In the case that we continue to discuss, he actually forced his wife to quit her job. So it seems that, she wasn't working and he wasn't working either, but they both had jobs. It's just that one was working at home and, one was going in the office. So I guess, I don't know if it has to do like social norms or like his ego or what it is, or just, what society thinks about you, but they both still had jobs, but the fact that he wasn't going out physically to do work, like people just assumed he was no longer the breadwinner. And that's not the social, that's not like, what society believes, especially in a country like India where it's, mostly like male dominated. Males go out to work, women don't have as much opportunities as males. So that was quite interesting to hear. We're going to be looking at the social and cultural environment from these indicators: mobility, workplace, pay, marriage, parenthood, entrepreneurship, assets, and pension. The Women, Business, and Law developed these set of indicators by viewing constraints through a gender lens. This was actually done in 2020 under the World Bank. So starting off with mobility, can a woman choose where to live in the same way as a man? Can a woman travel outside her home in the same way as a man? Can a woman apply for a passport in the same way as a man? And can a woman travel outside the country in the same way as a man? So can a woman travel in the same way? There's no law that permits this. There's no restrictions. However, we saw the stats on harassment. I don't think that, there's a law that's permitting it, but I think it's more so that women are scared to move around freely. So that's kind of what limits where they decide to live or how they, choose to leave their homes. In terms of kind of women apply for a passport in the same as a man, the process, of course, is a lot more tedious for women because, in terms of like the document to provide a marriage certificate, if you're not married, if you're divorced, you have to provide the proof of divorce. So it's just a lot more, I guess, complex and tedious for women to go through the process versus a male. In terms of mobility, Belize scored at 75. In terms of workplace, the law prohibit discrimination in employment based on gender. It also asks if there's any legislation on sexual harassment in employment and are there criminal harassment, non-discrimination based on gender. However, we've seen, many organizations do it, and sometimes it's not even intentional, but to an extent, I think us as society as a whole have the belief that, women can only do certain jobs, males can only do certain jobs, and it's more so to change that perspective. So in terms of workplace, they were scored at 75. In terms of pay, and this is where we scored really low actually. The questions asked, does the law mandate equal remuneration for work of equal value? Can women work the same 9 hours as men? Can women work in jobs deemed dangerous in the same way as men? And are women able to work in the same industries as men? And I was looking at the Belize Human Rights Report, and it does state that the law mandates equal pay for equal work, but the Labor Commissioner actually verified that on average men earned 90 Belize dollars more per month than women, just because they obviously held higher managerial positions. Women are also restricted to work in certain industries, including mining, construction, factories, energy, water, and transportation. And the law provides generally for the continuity of employment protection against unfair dismissal, including sexual harassment in the workplace, pregnancy, or HIV status. But the commissioner also reported that, this isn't really enforced. Like, there's all these laws, regulations that state protection against women, including sexual harassment, etc. in the workplace, but it's not really being enforced. And then in terms of marriage, we actually scored really well here. The question simply asks, is there no legal provisions that require a married woman to obey her husband? Can a woman be head of household the same as a man? Is there a legislation specifically addressing domestic violence? Can a woman obtain a judgment of divorce in the same way as a man? And does a woman have the same rights to remarry as a man? And we scored really well in terms of marriage. Now, in terms of parenthood, the questions asked, is there paid leave of at least 14 weeks available to mothers? Does the government administer 100% of maternity leave benefits? And is paid leave available to fathers? Is there paid parental leave? Is dismissal of pregnant workers prohibited? And, surprisingly, only Belize, the Dominican Republic, and Trinidad, I believe, have paid leave of at least 14 weeks available to mothers, which is the minimum standard recognized by the International Labor Organization. When I was doing a bit more research on this, I found that Barbados and I think Guyana, St. Kitts, St. Lucia are some of the only Caribbean countries where the government pays 100%. seen in many organizations that if you, I don't know how it's like in like bigger companies, but at least for smaller companies, if you were to become pregnant and they no longer see you fit or capable of carrying out the task, they would dismiss you. Although the law prohibits this, it does happen. In terms of national legislation, there's none that protect pregnant workers from being dismissed in other Caribbean countries, for example, Bermuda, Dominica, or Trinidad. When we speak about paid parental leave, I don't think we have this in Belize, but I obviously think that paid parental leave is important just so, you give some sort of flexibility to the woman as well. Paternity leave can also help level the playing field for working mothers. So I think this is definitely something to consider and where we can improve.
Can you talk a little bit more about dismissal of pregnant women? Because I don't think in Belize you can necessarily dismiss a pregnant woman easily.
So,
it's not easy to do at all. Once labor gets involved, that is not, as far as I know. Anybody knows otherwise? You can't just even if the pregnant one did not disclose her pregnancy to you, I don't think you can dismiss a pregnant employee.
Yeah, you can. I know that they deny employment, but you're right. I don't.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you can't dismiss them. So, do you know any more on that?
So what I meant about that is it's prohibited by the law, of course, but if you're working for your employer and I guess you as an employee decide not to take this up to labor, if there's no one else to report it, technically it's illegal, but an employer can still choose to do that if the employee decides not to report it or goes through with it. There's instances of, and I can't speak too much of it, but I've heard like of a situation like back, and so I'm originally from Orange, a situation where one of the employees, she became pregnant, the employer dismissed her. However, she never took the matter, or she never took the issue up to labor, just because I guess she had a certain amount of debt with the employer. So I guess she didn't really take it up to labor because I guess the employer decided not to. I guess it was kind of like a agreement that if you decide not to take this up to labor, like I'm gonna cancel like all your debt or whatever you have with the business. So technically you're right. It's not prohibited. It's not legal. But I'm just saying that there are some employers that still do it. Obviously it's unethical, but there's instances of where it does occur. And if you don't take this up to labor, then who is gonna know about it? Any other questions? Okay. Moving on to entrepreneurship, we scored a 75 on this. The questions asked, does the law prohibit discrimination in access to credit based on gender? Can a woman sign a contract in the same way as a man? And can a woman register a business in the same way as a man? And also, can a woman open a bank account in the same way as a man? And again, there's no law that prohibits this. To some extent, we do see that there is, discrimination based on access to credit when it comes to like a woman versus male. And we're going to speak about this a bit more later on. But in terms of entrepreneurship, we did score 75. As I mentioned, there's no real law that prohibits such things, but we've seen that a woman entrepreneur like walking into the bank, or even a minority walking into the bank, they're not they can't easily access financial services as anyone else can. In terms of assets, we also scored, Belize also scored really well on this area, and it simply asks if men and women have equal ownership rights to immovable property, do sons and daughters have equal rights to inherit assets, does allow grant spouse equal administrative authority over assets during marriage, and does allow provide for the valuation of non-monetary contributions. So in terms of assets, according to the Women's and Law Index, we've been performing really well here as well. And also, as it relates to pension, Belize also scored It's just are the ages which men and women can contribute, or sorry, can retire with full pension benefits equal? Are there mandatory retirement ages for men and women equal? So in terms of pension too, we're doing pretty well. Our total score for Belize, from the Women, Business and the Law Index, was 79.4, and Belize actually ranks 8 among selected Latin American and Caribbean countries. We've seen that there's not really any obstacles for women in terms of pension or access, even marriage rights and property rights, which is a good sign for women financial inclusion. However, as I mentioned, there are some challenges as it relates to entrepreneurship, parenthood, and labor rights and the mobility aspect of it. This is a comparison of the scores. So in high income, in Europe and Central Asia, Latin America and the Caribbean, East Asia and the Pacific. And one thing we can see from this is the scores that are the countries or the areas that are doing relatively a bit more better than the other countries haven't really changed, or the score hasn't changed significantly. So there hasn't been that much of a significant change or improvement, for example, in the Latin American and Caribbean. If you look at the score in 2017, it's about 78.7 versus 79.2 in 2019. However, you can see that countries that were doing, I guess, worse off in terms of their score, their increase, or I guess their improvement was a bit more significant. For example, like in South Asia and the Middle East, like there's been more of a progress between these years, but in terms of Latin America, there hasn't been much of a change in terms of the score. Now getting into barriers for women entrepreneurs. Some of the barriers are limited provision of digital payment services. Obviously, with the introduction of mobile wallets, this addresses this barrier to some extent. There's also lack of disaggregated data, which is going to be talked about a bit more on session 4. There's also negative perception towards women entrepreneurs, and there's preference of financial service providers towards larger loans. Also low the introduction of the mobile wallets in the market is really think of it as digital payments do have a range of benefits, privacy and control. That you're able to pay, for example, your kids like school. You're able to pay utility bills, and honestly, this is for women difficult for working the ethics work to, for example, go pay their school fees. So I think this is something that the digital payment sector can develop somewhat an alternative, maybe credit. Once they become more involved, Yeah, can you hear me? I'm not sure where you left me, so if you want me to go back.
Right here.
Okay, so we're right here. All right. All right. So yeah, I was speaking, access to financial services in terms of commercial banks for branches, and honestly, given the size of our population, we're doing pretty good, especially in comparison to other Latin American, the Caribbean countries. I think only with the exception of Guatemala, if I'm not mistaken. But in terms of, how easy it is to access financial services in terms of commercial banks per branch, given that, our population is roughly somewhere around 400, over that, but roughly around 400,000, we're doing pretty okay here as well. In terms of individual capabilities, looking at financial awareness, and this information is also from the National Financial Inclusion Strategy. Urban males, urban females, rural males, and rural females were asked to indicate their awareness of these different financial concepts and financial products, such as, ATM, savings account, credit card, debit card, interest rate, collateral, fixed term deposit, health and life insurance. And we can see that for the most part, it was rural females and even urban females that had less knowledge or less awareness of these financial products, while males were actually more aware of these financial products and concepts. So this is also an area definitely we need to improve in terms of financial literacy and awareness of these financial services and products. In terms of access to capital, this has forever remained a really, really big challenge for us. There's no real information that shows you sex disaggregated data based on access to capital. So, for example, how many loans are distributed to women versus men, or even how many loans are distributed to micro, small, medium enterprises, and how many of these are men or like women own business, while versus men own business. So there's not much information here, and this continues to remain a really, really great challenge.
Can I just ask?
Yes.
Our financial institutions can't provide this kind of information?
Honestly, that was something I was thinking about too, given that they do provide the loans and all that stuff. I would assume that they would be collecting this sort of information. I'm not exactly sure why it's not reported, but there's no way to publicly access that information. But I'm sure that, they must be collecting this information. It's just to figure out how, we can all have access to such information. So it's published and, it's public knowledge to everyone.
If I could just comment on that, I think it's a conversation to be had. I know someone from the central bank will be presenting next week on the financial inclusion strategy, but it's a case of, I think a lot of times you have access to a lot of data as an organization, and you're not thinking about, if I ask one more set of questions, if I get one more feel about my customers, I could look at the data in a totally different way. And that's true across many, many organizations, just looking at gender and age and demographic data.
I think too, and this comes from personal experience that on my part, that sometimes when a woman goes in to a financial institution to make a loan, even though they may be on this, they may have their own bank account, and the person is a professional woman earning a reasonable salary. The man that is running that organization wants the husband's permission to lend that money. And this happens at banks, at credit unions. It might not be the policy of the institution, but the cultural attitude of the male person running the organization. And then sometimes also when you go and you know you can get the loan, they turn around and call you baby. And so you walk away. And that's just a stinking attitude.
That's true.
So if that happens to a professional woman who with education, what about the young woman who wants to start her own business but doesn't have a male to speak for her?
But yeah, just to kind of speak to what you said, that is definitely true. I also find that sometimes, you know, organizations, they have all this data, like they have so much information to work with, but I don't think they necessarily know, you know, what to do with the information they have at hand, or I don't think they realize how valuable that information is. And you know, you also spoke about like, you know, women like asking like their husband's permission and stuff. I think it also has to do with the fact that sometimes like you could walk into the bank and like, you know, you could present all these great ideas you have as a woman entrepreneur, but there's just this thing with society that they're so quick, they're so easy to like look down at you as a woman, you know, versus when you come in with a male or you ask someone else to do like to take out the loan for you. So there's also that issue with like the customer service and perhaps even customer service, people working for customer service in financial institutions need some sort of like gender sensitivity training. In terms of individual capabilities, looking at the labor force, we can see that the labor force participation rate, there's 76.10% of males in the labor force, while there's only 48.2% females. This is actually from the SIV data in September 2021. In terms of unemployment rate, again, we see the, you know, the gender gap. There's 6.7% of males unemployed, while there's 13% of females unemployed. And this actually coincides with the women, the Women Business and the Law Index data. You know, we scored pretty low here, and it shows that women still face challenges as it relates to labor rights. Looking at some of the general constraints, as I mentioned, lack of sex disaggregated data, and you guys will touch a lot more, you know, of this, I think, in day 4 of the workshop, but financial institutions, like, they lack credible and, you know, gender disaggregated data, or it might be that they don't lack the data, they actually do have the data, but, you know, they don't really know what to do with the data. And without the data, you know, financial institutions cannot demonstrate, I guess, a business case for serving women or have a better, clearer understanding of the female market. That's why I also think, you know, the introduction of the digital payment services is actually a great opportunity to boost women financial inclusion, because, as I mentioned, they could probably create some sort of alternative credit modeling model to assess women and to really develop products and services catered to females. I guess financial institutions are not really prepared to develop products for these segments, and it has to do, I guess, to some extent with the lack of data. There's also a lack of focus on women in national strategies and regulations. I know we spoke about existing policies and regulations, and you have like the gender policy. So there's been some progress in terms of, you know, making women more, I guess, focused on in a lot of these policies. There's also lack of innovation serving women financial inclusion. There's lack of knowledge, motivation, and political will, I guess. And especially like in industry associations, and there's lack of research and information, or as I mentioned, there's probably some data, but I guess the organizations that are collecting this data, we're not really using it to the best of our ability. And as we saw, there's lack of women representation in leadership positions in public and private sector, even, you know, in the political space. And just to conclude, I wanted to kind of keep this short and sweet, but I think the lack of sex disaggregated data does hinder policymakers and, you know, even financial services, financial institutions from designing policies and products that meet the needs of women. We also spoke about, you know, digital financial services and how this can help with collecting sex disaggregated data, or even making you know, policymakers have information to develop female-friendly policies, products, and services to design better digital financial products for women. Not just digital financial products, but, you know, even your in-person financial services and products. And most importantly, education is key to all. So financial education and financial literacy programs for women are a critical investment in women's financial inclusion. I think it's really to start think about what can be done, to promote women financial inclusion, what can be done from an organizational standpoint, and even us as society as a whole, to close or to at least lessen the gender gap. And some things to think about is providing gender training for not just financial services, but for every organization. Create a more friendly, a more women-friendly customer experience for people walking into the bank, especially for women. Provide some sort of digital financial capability trainings, especially with the introduction of these mobile wallets. I feel like there needs to be some more digital financial literacy programs and training for women. And I think lastly, most importantly too, is to train women on soft skills, including self-confidence, decision-making, and effective communication. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Any questions?
I'm kind of hung up on this, not having the data that's disaggregated.
Right.
How do we know how many female have bank accounts versus male? But yet you can't tell how many females have access to loans. So they do use the data, but so I just think we need to press that our financial institutions do more.
We have to mine the data properly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And this is the importance of data mining and data analytics and that kind of thing. We need to be using more, doing more of.
They are able to provide the information if you ask for it, because I was doing a project in the sugarcane, in the sugar industry, and I needed to have that data because I wanted to understand the loan concentration within the sugarcane industry, and DFC specifically was able to provide that data to me, and I must tell you that it showed that there were quite a larger number of women accessing loans, and that their loan quantities were growing. However, compared to men did get larger loans. And I'm not saying that because I don't know the reason. I don't know if a woman didn't ask for a bigger loan and that's why. However, there was that disparity that men were accessing larger quantities and that women weren't. And also, in speaking to the female cane farmers specifically, they said that where they saw the bias was when, say for instance, they needed to add on additional equipment. Because I'm not sure if you realize, but there are quite a lot of female cane harvesters now and group leaders. And so when they wanted to access additional funding, they saw that they wanted them to repay the full loan, and other stricter measures were being put in place for their repayment aspect of it. However, the organizations weren't able to give me back that supporting documentation that it was real. They felt that it was a perception and not necessarily a reality. However, within the sugar cane belt, I can tell you that women felt that women loan officers were the ones who did this to them. So I think that many times we may be looking for women financial inclusion. However, we also need to look at the quantity of women loan officers that exist within our environment, because we're the persons that are perpetrating this entire madness that we're trying to face right now. Because we look at other women as, how are you getting the money to repay, and qualifying it not in an objective manner to be able to ascertain your repayment capacity.
And looking at it through our own lens as women and our own limitations, and not looking at the woman entrepreneur and what she brings to the table and her own determination. Were you able to look at data in terms of repayment, loan repayment?
And that was an interesting position, is that female repayment was at a higher rate. And sometimes financial institutions don't see women as favorable because women like to repay loans faster. So the profitability to the financial organization is not there. Because if you get a 10-year loan and you pay it off in 7 years, you are affecting my profitability because that wipes off $100,000 in loan repayment. So I do prefer to lend to a male who will take their entire loan period, because that is They're not looking at removing the bond of the loan. So you are not as attractive in the long run.
Women don't like debt.
Well,
Generally.
yeah.
So I think that an important issue is that we need to look at gender training in these organizations with people who provide services, beginning with the banks, customer service training, but with within a gender context. I know recently, and I'm going to call it Atlantic Bank, I had to work with a friend as recently as Monday who was opening up an account. This woman is a dentist. She carries her own name, never changed her husband's name. They ask her for her husband's name, profession, income, which has nothing to do with the account that she was opening.
Look at the never call her baby.
But no, this was also a woman customer service, and this was simply opening up a bank account, which we thought was totally unnecessary. What does her husband have to do with anything?
I guess that might also be something with central bank in terms of anti-money laundering. I don't know, but I'm just saying that has been the excuse. But again, we have to look at our standard operating procedures, our protocols, and our procedures that don't make sense because we're just implementers. We just implement without questioning. And that is a very good question to ask the central bank next week. I would want, if it's them, because a lot of the questions at the bank, I don't know if they just blame it or they say it's a reality, but the reality is it's always the AML compliance regulations that are causing me to ask you this. So I don't know what is real or not real any longer.
How deep does the data go in assessing these information? For example, moving away from banks but into insurance, be it health insurance or life insurance. I think there are two aspects of access to financial aid. One is opening an account. Second is receiving money from that account. And I know a lot of instances where a loved one dies, the monies that they left for their loved one don't go to the person who they're supposed to because certain policies hinder that. And if you're a single mother who needs the money from your husband's life insurance to sustain your family, but a certain policy doesn't allow you to get that, then that's a major hindrance. So how deep does the data go into looking to not just access but receiving financial aid?
I thought you named your beneficiary on insurance policies.
But I have had instances where women say, although my name the funding, whatever, I still can't get the money because X, Y, and Z. So, and I believe everyone knows someone who would
debts. Yeah, it could be encumbered by debts or something.
Yeah, but then what policies are being in place to include those people or let it be easier for people to get access to those funds?
I don't believe that there's an answer directly to that, but I do understand something of what she's saying. I had a friend who her husband had a heart attack, and the following day, without even being notified to the bank that he was ill, they closed down all accounts, and her family had no money to eat for. And I'm talking, he didn't die. He just had a heart attack, and it was grapevine information that they heard he had a heart attack. So it's not like official that I went in and said my husband had a heart attack and they closed down all the accounts and it disenfranchised the family. But again, I don't know the reasoning, but I can tell you that I do know of that in that case.
Yeah. So we don't just have to look at access that people could open a bank account or whatever, but the ability to get funds out of that account and the ability to get money out of that account as well, because that tells a bigger story.
Attorney, you probably might need to consult an attorney to hear
Yeah, that's I don't know. It could be lots of things. Can't speak on it.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the floor? I think we could then give Simran remotely all the way in Tampa a round of applause for her presentation. Simran is one of our senior analysts on our team and taking advantage of technology to have her come to work with us remotely. So she's empowering
What
us
is
with
her
our
last name?
MBA
It's
and
not.
continues to work with us.
Mr. Maka, what is Simran's last name?
Darianani.
Gariana.
You thought so. But
Yeah.
we still have similar spectrum of Taiwan with us.
So, with that, we will take 20 minutes for refreshment break, stretch your legs, and then we'll come back with the panel discussion.
Downstairs is asking if anybody owns that Toyota Tundra to see if they move it. So,
Toyota
Tundra, it's a big truck. Well, Chris is the guy who's planning it. Chris, he needs an interview.
You have to interview her.
You see?
No, man. Vicky had a boss. Vicky has been coordinating this event, so I just show up myself. Vicky had a reason. PPF not just me. It's not just me.
But that's why you should do it together. You should interview it together.
Alright, so I've already set up outside.
You are a woman.
No, Chris.
You can do
You
it.
could take the lead.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was going to.
The river scares me. I spoke to that girl. The sea scares her. Yes, I mean, I like it. My mom has learned that she's she remembers wearing a skirt and the sun just rolling. No, I would right away that slowly. But I'm changing that so much more to make that person for years. You're not even close to that.
But if I want you to
I'll be right back. Yes, it is actually very fresh. Yeah, like I'll go to but then and it's unsung, so because it's from the Spanish lady, and it's Spanish audio. So when they put on the other company, people translate it English. That's the point. And they didn't include me in Spanish. A lady who always visits me and she says sons and daughters. And I was going through and I could work on changes. Like changing it. But then there's a point that I started point and how sex is expansion because my grandmother never thought, oh, it's literally translated. Yes, our border, my mom and dad. She started from that because she wanted her own. But also but I have seen that at the end of the day, they have their opinion, but it's what that Yeah, organize it. It's so funny that
This is your mom here? When will you see her? I'm gonna bring us something, alright. I want to give it to Maya then.
Sorry?
I'll give it to Maya for you. I got up and baked wheat banana bread this morning, so I wanted to give her. I guess me.
very interesting, but to be honest, this is the first time I could get invited for something. So I mean, that speaks a lot of how much information this is. How foreign women, financial status of the country, foreign women. Time.
Yeah. Okay, again, the panel. we're going to start. Gonna have the panelists.
Hello. Oh, you have your, oh, yeah.
Do we need to
Memory
have
needs a
notebooks
little
and
jogging
No.
sometimes.
I can't believe you did all those stairs.
Huh? Oh, that I walk up? Yeah.
Hello.
You see, though, there is an additional motivation. I'm one of those people who don't like to rush for anything. And when you tell me the elevator was on the fourth floor and we were
and I don't want to tell you her age because that would have really freaked out Joseph. It would make me feel bad about myself.
All right.
I love her later.
All right, we're ready to resume this session with our panel discussion. We have an excellent panel here this morning. Ladies, we're noting in the sidebar conversation that it's mostly women that are attending this event, and perhaps we need to change our cultural norms and start inviting some more men to have the female financial inclusion and economic empowerment discussion.
they need to be hearing these things.
Well, hopefully some of them are streaming on YouTube and
No,
you know,
it's not
catch
too
me.
late, Chris.
I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. I am here. It's definitely a great learning experience and some things that make a lot of sense.
And we have a lot of testosterone amongst the four of us.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So let me introduce our panel. We have Ms. Faride Ahmad. She's the owner and marketing director of Camila Ahmad and Sons Limited. We have Dr. Dion Chamberlain, managing director of Chamberlain Consulting. We have Dr. Sylvia Catus, the dean of the Faculty of Business and Entrepreneurship at Galen University, and we have Dr. Maxine McKay, assistant professor at University of Belize. So welcome, panel. So we're gonna flip between the entrepreneurial conversation and then the support system, which is the academia conversation. And I guess my first question, just by proximity, to go to you, Ms. Faride, just could you give us an overview of sort of your entrepreneurial journey as a woman? And what are some of the challenges that you faced?
Well, good morning, everyone. As a woman working for my family company, it's been a great experience. My mom is a very strong woman. I think she should be here instead of me because she's really the one who grew her business. We went from being a small shop to being an import and distribution company because of her guts, you know, to go out there. And she says she was one of the first saleswomen in Belize because she remembers going to different stores and selling and being surrounded by only men. So growing up, I was always empowered to do whatever I wanted to do as a female, you know, as long as it was for the betterment of myself. And it was not until I started working and traveling for the business that I witnessed that there are many businesses out there that are ruled by men. And women, at the end of the business meeting, women went to their rooms at the hotel and men had their own fun. And I wasn't invited, and I said, hey, this isn't right, you know? And I also observed that when my brother went, I'm talking about 13 years ago, when my brother went, he was the main character and he was invited to these things that I wasn't. And so when I came back, I wanted to change that in our business and not have that happen in Belize, in Corozal, in our business. So we work hard at empowering women
to the point that our biggest paid salaries are women. Our office is 95% women. There's honestly my brother and one guy. And he always complains. I think you gave an example today. He always complains, why am I the only man? And so I think now we need to kind of come back a little bit and start, hiring more men in these positions. But I think whenever you have a great support system of women and you create that, you could build other women. So whatever obstacles my mom and I had, we turned it around and made the business great, a great environment for women.
Dr. Chamberlain, same question.
Thank you. I believe that my entrepreneurship journey started, and I know that Anissa in the room can attest to this. My mother used to sell meringue pie and pizza on Saturdays to make ends meet. And I found out very quickly that retail was a pain on my walking around the entire neighborhood trying to sell it. So I decided to create a wholesale environment where I would sell pizzas and meringue pie whole, and she would finish baking and I would just deliver within an hour and a half and collect the money and bring it home. What I didn't know was growth, and I guess this is what Ms. Amado will teach us, is that I didn't want her to know I was sold whatever amount because I didn't want her to pay more, right? Because I didn't want to have to sell more. So I limited her growth, and so I wasn't a great entrepreneur in the very beginning. And then a few years later, I went to Center for Applied Sciences and Negotiation in Switzerland for training. And they made us take a test on entrepreneurship, and I failed it in the sense that it said that I was least likely to be a good entrepreneur because I was risk averse. And honestly, I took it to heart, and although I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I did. And so my first thing to anybody out there who wants to be an entrepreneur, don't take any of these tests. Because they lie or they give you some kind of concocted thing. However, at this training, it was on entrepreneurship and leadership, and I learned what to do to become a great entrepreneur. And so despite the fact that I wasn't supposed to be one, I learned the concept of social entrepreneurship, where you do something that is good for your society, where you make an impact on your society, and you could actually do a business where 50% of your revenue was financial and the other 50% was philanthropic. And so our entrepreneurship is built on word of mouth, people wanting to do better for other companies by hiring us. So for every job that we get that is paid, we do free jobs for like the Young Women's Christian Association. That's how I know Deanna. I've done training for her when she was there. And we do it throughout the country in other areas and other organizations and schools and all that who can't afford services that we can give. So that is where entrepreneurship really is for us, and it has made us extremely successful. I believe that we're seen as one of the top boutique consulting firms within the country, and we prescribe to all of the laws of the country. We pay all of our taxes. We do not operate in a gray economy because we believe that if in any ecosystem that you're in, you support that ecosystem, whether it be your taxes, integration of women, men, gender. If you notice, the other man in this room is my business partner, so we make sure that it's at any growth that a woman has, a man has to have an equal growth. And it's not about us being at the table, it's about us being at the table being listened to, understood, where we are valued. Because some people are looking at this thing like that if we have 50% men in the room and 50% women in the room, then we're going to be equal. If these two men in this room feel included, that is where we are including others, and that's really our focus as entrepreneurs. But I believe that we do things through others and with others, which is the Ubuntu African training that Ms. Palacio, our mayor, who's here, focuses on as well. So that's really about us.
If I could ask, I guess, to start with Dr. Katus from Galen, do you offer specific learning opportunities and programs dealing with entrepreneurship and innovation and development at your institution?
Before I begin, I'd like to just say how awesome it feels to be up here with you three women and also with the other women in the room. It's always great when we convene to share with each other to further develop our network. University of Galen offers a full entrepreneurship degree program. Our students also have opportunities
to work with the local community through a partnership that we have with the San Ignacio Santa Elena Town Council. Our students have the opportunity to work with many of the micro and small business owners in that vicinity. Many of them are in the informal sector, and the town council is trying to bring them into the formal sector. But in addition to that, we have introduced entrepreneurship courses in several of our other programs. We feel that it is important that our students learn to be able to, whatever they're interested in, if they don't want to go into an establishment, that they can make their own way. However, our entrepreneurship program is not just about being your own boss. You know, most people say they want to become entrepreneurship because they want to be their own boss. They don't want to work for nobody. Our entrepreneurship program focuses on developing employers. Yes, we have people who, yeah, you'll be your own boss, but you can be the boss of many others and create employment. In addition to the fact that we want our students to create innovative products and services, we have a focus as well of developing entrepreneurial thinking, entrepreneurial attitude. That is something that is desperately lacking in our country. That I can do attitude. Throw it at me, I'll do it, I'll get it done. And that's what we try to do with our students. So we know that some of our students might not go and open their own business and become the next big employer in Belize. However, they may go to work in corporations and other organizations. And in fact, many corporations and organizations are now hiring people with entrepreneurship background. They're referred to as intrapreneurs. These are people that these companies bring into their business. They give them special projects, they provide them with the resources and have them run with it. We're training them to be great team leaders, to be able to work independently as well as with teams, but to have that attitude that they can get it done.
Excellent. Dr. Monkey. Same question.
Good morning once again to everyone. The University of Belize does offer several programs that are geared towards development in terms of business administration, finance, marketing, public sector management. However, we have a bachelor's in business management with a focus in e-skills. And when I was looking at the data for 2021 and 2021-1, sadly to say, the enrollment was zero. So no persons were specifically enrolled in our entrepreneur specialized programs. But we do offer several innovative courses across the spectrum where people can decide if they want to enter entrepreneurship practices, etc. But to say we have a specifically branded course for persons who want to become self-employed, that is not the case. But our courses such as business finance, management, and things like that, I do believe helps to gear persons towards becoming self-employed. Some of the persons who do take courses at the University of Belize are already self-employed and they just want that advancement in terms of recognition, in terms of certification, etc. There are several courses that offer persons to become innovative. I do believe that we, from the onset, take innovative students into our institutions. There are persons who are well equipped, who are versed, etc. We just have to enhance that innovative aspect of them. Like Dr. Katu said, we help to build their self-confidence because we do have introverts and extroverts. And it does not mean that because you're an introvert, that means you're incapable of becoming a self-employed person. Our data also suggests significantly across the spectrum, females are significantly represented in our programs, yet the reach of them becoming entrepreneurs is globally low, and some of the statistics our research said 56% of women are, graduating with degrees, but they're still not attaining entrepreneur skills. And I believe even though you can ascertain and help them to develop that self-confidence with the courses that we offer, there's still more that a person has to do in terms of societal value. So we do not have a full entrepreneur program, but we do offer from the associates to the bachelor's and the master's in management, the e-skill course, right, and other supplementary courses that help to ascertain whenever we need them to have the grant accreditation. Also, I want to add that there's an expo that is held every single year for the bachelor students, and I have seen personally a lot of persons leave that expo and become self-employed, develop their own marketing products, etc., and they still sustain it throughout, that becomes their livelihood. So I think we have a far reach in terms of employability, the person who an employer wants because of our courses and our programs. Thank you.
If I'll keep it right there. 2 seconds. You said that, I guess, you focus on entrepreneurial skills and innovation. In those courses, and you spoke about female representation there, do you focus on examples of successful women entrepreneurs to foster that discussion where more females feel empowered to open a business, and is there scope to improve that?
To be honest, I believe even though females across the spectrum are represented in terms of the lecturers, most of the lecturers are females, particularly at our business campus in Belize City. But in terms of getting them mentors and persons who can, the mentees, mentors, we are not doing enough. I believe at the University of Belize we need to do more to get more females in the classrooms as guest speakers or as persons who can take our students under their wings and help to foster that path if they want to become self-employed, etc. But it's more than self-employability, it's sustainability for me, because you can become self-employed, but at what cost and at what level, right? So I don't think we have enough women represented in our programs in terms of like getting persons involved in guiding these students, etc., because most of our sessions are male-dominated representations. Not to say we should leave the males behind, but we need examples in terms of females. I can see this through whether you're a mother, whether you're just a sister or a daughter, that I can see myself in that female entrepreneur. Right? Because it's hard to identify myself as a female with a male entrepreneur. And so I do believe we need more female representation. It's not enough at UB.
And I guess Dr. Same question.
One of the ways in which we do it, and I will agree with Maxine, is that we do need to be as well more deliberate. We do invite speakers, women speakers, into the classroom. I'm really excited to say that we have a very small cohort of people in the entrepreneurship degree program this year, but it's 100% female. So this gives us a great opportunity to shape some programs. We really need to revise some programs, and much of some of the things I'm hearing here today and some of the research that we're doing gives us the kind of tools that we will need to shape those programs and work with that cohort of women entrepreneurs that we're developing. And so we're really excited about that. I wanted to also add, we have a generalist business administration degree program as well. But in that generalist program, our students have the opportunity to, it's really awesome in that they can concentrate in other areas. So you can graduate with a business administration degree with a concentration in entrepreneurship or criminal justice or computer science or any of the anthropology, hospitality and tourism management. In fact, speaking of hospitality and tourism management, our students as well in that program are groomed to be entrepreneurs, not just workers and managers and leaders in the area, but also we expect they'll be entrepreneurs. And interestingly too, we have a program in veterinary technology, and we have introduced entrepreneurship in that program because we find that students, this is something, whether it's a side hustle now and they decide to go on to be vets, this is something that may remain a business for them.
All right.
Is that right?
Direction. I want to ask now from the entrepreneurial perspective, how do you think social norms affect women's ability to participate and operate in the business space? And I guess what can or should we do to kind of change it if change is necessary?
You know, I was just listening as Dr. McKay was saying that most of the lecturers are female, yet the presenters that they bring in the room are male. So it's a female decision that we're not including our fellow women. I mean, when you really come down to it. So social inclusion for women means that we have to invite the women. Men are willing to crash parties. Women, we don't necessarily crash. Men are prone to go ask you to dance. Women, we wait for someone to dance with us. And that's why I said I have a high testosterone level, because I do the opposite, right? So the same thing, and I was speaking to Isani earlier, where, I mean, women want to be at the table, but we are still reluctant to be there. And then our peers are not willing to really have us there. And the minute we start speaking, they start wondering, why are we there? Are we horizontal, vertical? What are we doing with somebody else or some male to have arrived at that destination or position? So we are determining our own lack of inclusion, is my perspective of it. But it comes back to something that my business partner, Mr. Miranda, has done, which is understanding generational hurt, or how we're brought up. I mean, Ms. Ahmad spoke about the fact that she was brought up by a very strong woman. So a strong woman breeds strong women. When you're in a home which is weak women who can't assert themselves, you can't really expect our girls to grow up thinking or doing differently. And not that I'm trying to politicize or bring anything that's public in the media right now, but as I watched even the news play out where people were jumping up and siding with different persons in reference to an allegation that occurred in the media over this past week, what we don't understand is when we choose sides, we choose sides. And many times the female is knocked apart. And I'm not saying there's a truth or not a truth and who I've sided with or whatever it is, but for inclusion of women to occur, we as women need to learn to support women. Stop doing the math about the amount of years and whatever has occurred in life. I just realized that generational hurt needs to be healed, to be done. We need to build the self-esteem in our women, in our girls, and in our boys, because I find like boys who are told, don't cry, man up, fess up, be a big man, is not a good thing either. We should be allowed to have emotions in an entrepreneurial space, in a male-female gender space, to learn that our emotions don't direct and dictate our outcomes, our decisions, or our actions. But emotions are okay. We need to stop telling people, leave that at the door and come in differently. The reality is I'm a human and I have my feelings, and these things need to be fostered. We need mental care, emotional care, but more than anything, we need to build on civic pride, we need to build on esteem, and we need to heal the generational hurt of us being left behind, of having single parenting, whatever it is that we feel is causing us not to move forward as women, and take our rightful place. Men want us at the table. I'm a board member of PFF. I mean, I was asked, I didn't push my way in. Men want us at the table. But do we want to meaningfully come to the table and engage, not shrink back like shrinking violence and not realize that we're here to manifest the glory that is within all of us? It's really a decision that women have to make, honestly. I really believe that we can come to the party, but if we don't walk to the door and ask for an invitation if we wanted to be there, and that is where I like the concept of, Mayor mentioned assertiveness today. We need to become assertive to take our place. Men, women, children, boys, girls, whoever it is. We're all created equal under God. And I think that we need to assert that position and not put it as a gender position at any given point. Put it as a human being position, becoming humane, respectful, having integrity, and driving what it is that we want to drive forward. And that's really my take on it. It's not really separatist according to gender or sex or anything of that nature.
Excellent.
Well, she answered that very well. I agree with her that we are our own barriers. I've met a lot of women in my business who reach a certain level and they're scared to take that jump to the top. And sometimes they'd say, oh, my husband doesn't want me to travel. Or My mom doesn't think that I should be, traveling all over the country by myself, or my husband, now that I'm married, doesn't want me to have meetings with men. I mean, I'm from Corozal, that's where our business is. And so this mentality comes through, and then what can I do as an employer? I can't tell her, you're making the wrong decisions, don't be with your husband, or, that is crazy for me to say something like that. So I have to back off and say, okay, then you only reach this position. And so I do agree with you completely that it's us that have to break that barrier.
Can I add something there? One of the things that we don't realize that we can be solution oriented, and I remember Margarita Burrows, I don't know if you all know her, and also Anna Gill. Both of them were salespeople well before salespeople ever existed, and both of them had those same norms placed upon them. But you know what they did? They allocated a portion of their salary to a driver to give comfort to their husbands, wives, families, whatever, because they wanted those jobs. We can put up all the negative reasons why we can't be as all-encompassing in a male world. And I can't lift 50 pounds of rice and flour over my back, but you know what? I could give somebody a little $60 a week to work along with me and carry the flour if that's my job on a port environment or whatever. We create the limitations. Create the solutions instead. Take the big jobs that are heavy and are not female-oriented, because it's true, I don't want to lift things, but the reality is I could give a piece of my salary and give somebody else a little bit of a job so that they could do the things that I can't or won't or cannot do, because the sexual and gender norm says that I can't or shouldn't, and maybe I just don't want to either, right? But I'll tell you something, I like a man who opens a door for me. I want people to carry my suitcases, and I usually put men to do it. I want to be female according to the female norm. I'm sorry, I'm not pushing for masculinity in my gender inclusiveness. I don't want to clean the yard. I want to cook. Again, I don't want that people think this, and that's a problem that I'm seeing a lot of young people take on at this point. They feel that female inclusion means that I can't be soft and warm and kind and female, and I just don't want that to be where we go to. Because I cook 3 meals a day and I enjoy doing it. But I'm not going to cut the grass, I'm not going to put out the garbage.
So Diane, you are really talking about the fact that we do have to get rid of gender roles as such. I know that the way we raise children, we raise them with certain gender roles. And I think that we need to raise children more intentionally. So that they don't feel because I'm a guy, I have to cut the grass or take out the trash. But if you're a girl and you want to do that, that is fine. And I think that is one of the greatest impediments that we have, those gender roles that society put us in. I also want to say another thing, as you were talking about as women, how we support each other. One of the things that we don't do enough of is celebrate women. We hear women's successes. We often don't go out their way to say, hey, I like what you're doing. Or if we hear a woman is launching a new product, do we go out of our way to be there, to be present, to show her that we're supporting? So that's.
And in the spirit of that, let's celebrate Miss Ahmad's mother, because she created an awesome entrepreneur, and I think we should give her a round of applause. She's not in the room, but at least let her know that we appreciate that. That every single mother, father has a role.
Thank you very much. And I agree with you guys 100%. And I think we're not looking to be better than men. We're looking to be equal. And I think that is the key word. I work with my brother, and I think we're the yin and the yang. We need each other. I respect his opinion and his perspective, and so he does mine. And that balance we bring to the table is what makes us so dynamic.
We'll keep it right here. What opportunities do you see for female entrepreneurs, and what advice or suggestions would you give to them?
Well, continuing the conversations we were having earlier about the barriers, I mean, if you break those barriers, the sky is the limit. I don't think there's no limit on women, on what they can achieve, what they can do. We've come a long way as women. 13 years ago when I started working, there weren't workshops like this. At least I wasn't invited to them if they were. And so this, to me, something like this is already a breakthrough. It might not be a big deal to what we could do, or it could just be like a drop of water, but it is moving forward, and we can't move backwards from here. So I don't see any. I see so much hope and so much brightness for women, and I just hope that they don't block themselves and say, oh, I can't take him out to dance. I really like him, but I can't take him out to dance. Take him out to dance. Do all those things that you want to do. Challenge yourself, and I think the sky's the limit.
Same question. Same question. What are the opportunities you see for female entrepreneurs, and what advice or suggestions would you give to them?
I like small steps or low-hanging fruit, and I think that Dr. Aird mentioned a little while that in terms of say banking questions and all that, I think that all of us, if we go back to organizations right now, look at our forms and what are we asking that needs to be in there? What is irrelevant and what is actually blocking a woman from moving forward? That's a really amazing step that everybody in this room, there's the mayor here from Belmopan, she believes the whole of Belmopan in one sweep, We have Digi, we have Beltray. Could you imagine if all of you all went back and this is a powerful people in the room, right? So I'm seeing something just as simple as that would, really make a huge difference. So that would be something that I'd love to see occur. And again, the same statement, I think that both Ms. Amada and Sylvia alluded to it, was where it's all about mindset, a lot of it. A lot of it is a mindset and a decision that all of us have to make. And if all of us in this room as well walk away saying, you know what, every time I feel like belittling or questioning something a woman says or does, even if it's on Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is that I'm looking at, I won't do it. In fact, I'm going to say something positive or empowering that makes that person feel better. Whether you have to take a neutral position that will make that person just not feel victimized or whatever it is. I think these are the small things that we can do right now as we walk out of here, because honestly, this is the only mass that we have in front of us right now, for us to be able to gain that critical mass. And so, and I like what Dr. McKay mentioned about mentoring. I think that all of you in this room could actually go to her and write down your name and say, Ms. McKay, you call me and I'll be a mentor for these same people that you said don't have one. I have several mentors, but they're all males, sadly. Not that I chose that, but these males came forward and said, when I was first starting my business, I had a male consultant who was working with me while I was at Digi at the time, and he says, you don't belong here, and I want to help you. I'm going to help you set up your business plan. I'm going to help you do your financial forecast. I'm going to help you price your business. I'm going to help you with any kind of material and direction that you want. And it's because of him that I feel that our success started, right? So I want for other people to know that you can get that assistance and that help. And with our company, because of our social entrepreneurship, we're willing to assist, mentor, guide, whatever it is. However, mentorship doesn't mean that you push it, because if a mentor doesn't want you, a mentee, doesn't want you, that's not your role. As a mentor, a mentee has to search you and seek you. You have to ask that person to the dance. So you can offer your names. However, if that person doesn't come and say, I want to talk to you, can you help mentor me? Then you can't go and say, I want to mentor somebody. Mentorship is you're the sexy dancer that they need to dance with, right? So they have to ask you.
All right, thank you, Dion. So if I could ask Dr. McKay, what is the role from your perspective, or how can universities and education on a whole, because it starts at a much earlier age perhaps, what role can academia play in accelerating women's economic empowerment?
Well, as I said earlier, we already have the women in the classrooms in terms of educational empowerment, because significantly, as noted earlier, when I was looking at the 2020 data, the 21 data, all our bachelor's program and associate's program that geared towards business, women propelled. But I believe in terms of empowering women and encouraging women, we have to start with self, and like what Dr. Chamberlain said, we have to teach women to, when they look in the mirror, that I do not see behind me males following me, but I see other females following me. Because we have this tendency, if like someone is selling eyelashes on the internet, we will criticize, we will chastise. So I think as a university, women have to be more confident. You have to build confidence in women at a very early age. I know that Dr. Bob the primary schools do something called financial literacy, right? And so women have to become more financially literate because you can be empowering yourself through education. So I believe that the university can not only offer e-skills or things like that, but programs that help build interpersonal skills, extra personal skills, and also financial literacy, because women lack, when you look at the research, women are not financially literate. They believe that they don't kind of answer the question of financial literacy. So I think as a university, we need to, yes, encourage women, but we have to create opportunities for them within the same university, maybe in short programs, tailor the curricula to be more enriching for them, let them see themselves not only as self-employed, but as a boss, as a CEO in an organization, because it's more than developing the e-skills, but can I lead? Can I lead a bank? Can I be that person who is sitting in the bank? We also need to be less critical of ourselves as females, and the university can maybe do something to encourage that in terms of some courses. And I also believe that the attitudinal change of society is crucial. And as a national university, we have to lead the change in terms of how the persons within the community sees us. Because yes, we have more females than male graduating, but what do we do to these females in terms of self-worth? Right? What do we offer them in terms of self-worth? If I see a female competing against a male, we cannot look at a female as a sex object. We have to look at them as a more valuable asset rather than just someone in a short skirt or a tight skirt. Right, so there's a lot of things that we can do, but I think it starts with building self-confidence, creating courses that look at the humanistic aspect of yourself as females and males, because we can't leave our males behind. Even though the standard development goal 5 speaks of equality for women and girls across the spectrum, we cannot leave the males behind, because who will our daughters marry? You know, who our daughters look up to? We can't leave the males behind, because we need the support of the males in order to be self-sustainable. But I believe that we have to build programs that are incorporative of every aspect of the human being, and not only the financial aspect. So the tailoring of the curricula is very, very critical. We have to reach out to the community to change attitudes of how we see the females who are graduating and give them equal opportunities along their male counterparts, rather than say, oh, a male can do the job better in terms of accounting, because we have this stigma that males are better in math, right? A female can't do math. If you speak to STEM education, STEM was catered only for males. We have to look at changing the game, right, so that we can cater for our females in terms of the divide.
All right. That's you, same question.
Same question. I think one of the most important roles for us at Galen University is to provide an enabling environment. This could include programs and policies that would provide access to information and skills development for leadership, as well as other resources. We need to put in place programs or the type of curriculum that would appeal to both traditional and non-traditional learners. Not everyone wants to go back to school and get an academic degree or a certificate, or are they even able to do so? So we have to meet people where they are. Unfortunately, at Galen University, from our inception, we had an online platform. So when the pandemic came, and so we were reaching people all over the nation. So when the pandemic came, it was easy for us. We seamlessly moved into a space that we were occupying before, and we owned it, and we were able to continue to provide for students. However, our reach has to be greater than our students. As I said earlier, we need to reach those non-traditional learners. We need to go into those workspaces in the South where there are people who may not have any kind of formal education, but they do need some training in developing their business, managing, taking that business to the next level. All these things are possible. You don't have to have a formal education or degree. Dr. McKay mentioned earlier about financial literacy. Our focus is not so much financial literacy, but we have a focus on financial education. Recently, we were asked by a very large organization to come in and provide financial education for their employees. They found that their employees, although they were well paid, were not managing their finances well. And by the way, this is a financial institution that will go nameless. And we went in, we developed a program. Ms. Deanna Perifit was one of the people that helped develop that program. In fact, she's one of the facilitators in the program. The program was very successful. Subsequently, the institution asked us if we would develop such a program for teachers. And we developed that as a professional development program, and we put it on the Teacher Learning Network. And over 75 teachers access that program. We're also available to develop a curriculum to teach financial education within the schools. So it's something we're seriously thinking about. And most recently, as last week, we delivered a program for universal hardware. Again, there people were having extreme financial difficulties, and our company was it was affecting. That sort of thing affects productivity in a company. So was a good investment. The company invested well. They paid us well to come in and work with their 20 employees. And it had an interesting twist to it, because we were going to give out their completion certificate at the end of the program. And the company said, no, we don't want you to do that. We paid for this, and we want to see results. And so what they did, they had Ms. Deanna and the other facilitator that evening at the end talk with each employee and have each employee make a commitment as to what they would do to change their financial position. And we made sure we made it realistic. If you're spending $200 a month for lunch and you only make $600 or $800, you know that's outrageous. So, but you can't stop not buying lunch. So we try to make these things realistic. We had to have each employee pledge what they will do. And at the end of a certain period, the employee, I guess we have to go back, Deanna, and see what they've done, and then the employer will decide what to do. But financial education is very important. We need to start it at the secondary school. Personally, I believe we need to start it at the primary school level. That is one of the things. Women manage money well, the little money they have. But if they had the tools to really understand how to manage it, that's what we need to do. Not just women, but men and women.
I like the fact that she brought that over, because in the sugarcane industry, for instance, the women are the ones who have taken up most of the financial literacy training within that area. And the reason they have is because the men have told them, we want you to do it because you will do the banking for us. We're in the cane farms, we're doing our work out there. We really don't have time to go to the training that they're doing by EU and by fair trade and whoever it is, because it's a mandatory requirement. And you are the ones who have to go and wait in the bank line and deal with all the finances and pay the staff and all of that. Because when we have to pay the staff, then we are weak and we give them extra money for rum and whatever it is. So we know that you're not going to do that, and you're going to hold the money for the school fees and all of that kind of stuff. So I find that very interesting that within that area, they understand the value of the
Excellent point. Any comments before we?
I'm good.
Okay, so I think at this point we could reach out to the audience for questions or comments. If there's a specific panelist you want to answer, please indicate as well.
Just one question, not a question, it's a comment really. I think that, the point that Dion brought up about the women cane farmers and so on, that is something that I didn't know. And I suspect that most of Belize doesn't know that too, unless you live in the north, in the cane farming areas. And I say that because I think about all of the younger women or girls. I really don't like the term female. I hate that word, but I like women or girls. The young girls who are coming out of high school or who are leaving primary school, who left the primary school system, haven't had the benefit of a high school education, but they're struggling. They want to be hair braiders, or they have ideas for a business and they want to get in. And they live in parts of the city, in communities that are, ridden with gang violence, and they see things on the streets, and you beat a boy, you get pregnant, and you have 10 children, but they don't see role models emerging out of their communities that they could look up to. And I'm sure that they are role models. In Belize, when we celebrate Women's Month, when we go with women of worth and this and that and the other, it's the same people over and over. There are other women of worth that we need to celebrate. We have to go into the heart of the city, the heart of our communities, where we have the young women who really need the help. And we have to celebrate them and the people who are coming out. So many of our mothers, so many of their mothers, they're entrepreneurs too. Even if they're entrepreneurs in their kitchen, breaking bread and selling it, and selling tacos at the side of the street, washing people's laundry, because they are doing everything, creating miracles out of nothing really, trying to support their families and holding their families together. I think we have to, if we want to effect changes, we have to go and reach the people where the change is most needed, and celebrate the small steps that people are able to take, and hold up role models that the young women can relate to. They hold up, I don't know, Tom Jones's wife. Well, Tom Jones's wife came out of came out of a social environment, a home environment, where success might have been almost guaranteed for her. We have to go to those communities where the women need help, the young women need help, and find the role models for them. That's my 2 cents.
Good morning. I have a question for Dr. Patus and Dr. McKay. You guys both mentioned about the importance of having classes or sessions catered to entrepreneurship, right? Coming from a financial institution and going back to what the young lady had mentioned in the presentation earlier, we have a lot of data at the bank, right? There's data for everything, for all transactions we can do, male, female, whatever. But I think what we lack is, how do you read that data? How do you interpret that data to create specific products and services? So is understanding data and interpreting data a part of the curriculum?
So you need to send people to our data analytics class. We have a data analytics class and we have a business analytics class. We have introduced that both at the undergraduate level and the graduate level. In fact, it's interesting how we ended up introducing the first business analytics class. In our marketing program, our students, marketing students, for most of our students have to take at least 3 or 4 math classes. 6 marketing students came to me when they had to take, I think, their 3rd calculus. And they said, Dr. Patus, why do we're marketing students, we're creative people, why do we have to take a math class? And I tried to explain the importance, blah, blah, blah. They said, Dr. Patus, is there some other class we can take? So I said, you have to know how to be quantitative. You have to know to crunch numbers. You have to know how to understand numbers. They said, but we don't want to take them calculus class. Why we need it? So I said, okay, I will replace the calculus class, but it will be another quantitative class. And that's how we introduce the business analytics class. And they're very happy with it.
And that was before the whole business of data analytics and business analytics became a symphony.
Yes. To answer our question, the University of Belize does offer research across the spectrum where students are tasked to read data, interpret data, and analyze it, what is on the paper, etc. So we do offer courses from the associates to the master's level at the University of Belize. And there are a couple of courses, as Dr. Patus said, that offers it quantitatively, the research-based business statistics, calculus, so they do get it enough, but the interpretation, sometimes they struggle with it. and a lot of them assume qualitative research is easy, either to read, but quantitatively they struggle sometimes with numbers, but we do offer the courses from the associates to the master's level to help them read the data and analyze it and interpret it.
Yeah, because I think that's key. Gathering the data is one thing, but putting together your reports and making it effective is another.
Yeah, and I must add that at the bachelor's level, for the business students, they can decide to do a thesis or go into the job market and do internship there. And a lot of the research that they do, the ones who choose the thesis, undergraduate thesis, the university has an annual symposium, research symposium, where they present this information, and a lot of it is publicly based in terms of relevance of motivation, employability, gender disparity in business field, the glass ceiling effect, etc. So we do present the data back to the public annually from University of Belize students.
Good morning. I know Dr. Maxine had mentioned that when it comes to highlighting some of the female in the entrepreneurship course. And at that point in time, her business idea was Creole Mix. Again, another school project, and she does dry bread, flour, buns, so she does those mix. And that specific business had her pivot a bit, and she did that box and donuts. So again, there are several success stories that come from the marketing program that we need to continuously highlight, and just putting it out there that in terms of support, Beltrade is there to support these students. We do look at the potential in these business and ensure that the opportunities to take it from idea to actual finished product is something that is supported.
Thank you for that, because you are right. There are some very good persons who come out of it, particularly Expo, and their product is marketable and they still have longevity. And I want to symbolically highlight Ms. Ida Arzu, because she's a steering person behind that continuously progressive Expo that has become very, very prosperous for the students, and they have some excellent ideas. And I want to challenge Beltrade to invite, come to the university and offer more support for our students, because there's a lot of students who have ideas. I mean, I want to go as simple as like running a taxi business. It's a male-dominated business. I mean, it's perhaps not safe for females to have a taxi business, but I mean, there's a lot of persons who need to catch a taxi. If we can train females to not see like the marginalization in terms of owning a taxi, running a taxi at Pakistan. Pakistan people make a lot of money, but there's this stereotype that people hold that only Hispanic persons can run a taxi. And we as a populace would only want to buy from a Hispanic person. But if we try to change that cultural stereotype and that gender stereotype, there's a lot of things that women can do and become more independent, less dependent on men. You don't need an academic degree to run a business successfully, but you need the community support and the willpower to do it. So Beltrade can offer, some more support. I know you have done a lot for us, but I think it's a community game changer to not let people feel, oh, because only a man can run a taxi, I can't run a taxi. If I have to get down to the ground and run a taxi, I came from a pregnant high school graduate, right? And so when you talk about success stories, you have to look at not where the person is right now, but where they have come from, right? So I do think that we have good products from UB that are doing their thing, but we still need more. We need more of those persons present to let us see that by Belizean, support women, support men as well, but let them see that you don't have to have a grandeur business idea to be successful, but a taco stand can also be successful. A person driving a taxi can also be successful.
Thanks for that, Maxine. We have several of our graduates who were in the program who are now successful entrepreneurs. In fact, some of them started during their studies. We have Castillo's Dough that most of you probably see in Brody's and Save You. That's one. And we also, Naturally Belizean, she is what I call a serial entrepreneur. And most good entrepreneurs, and I'm looking at you, Frederick, most good entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs. One thing don't work, they go to a next thing, or they have multiple things going on. And our Miss Naturally Belizean, I call a serial entrepreneur. Also, we found that during the pandemic, several of our students found entrepreneurial pursuits. And whereby it might have been a side hustle at the time, those things are growing into the hustle. So we do need to encourage our students, or young women and young men, but our focus these next few days are on young women and women. I also want to talk a little bit about the fact that coaching, we don't place enough emphasis. Dr. Chamberlain mentioned mentoring, and I find that mentoring is really important, especially for the younger entrepreneurs. But for the women who are already in business, who have been in business for a while, oftentimes they do need to get a personal coach, somebody that I could talk to about taking that business to the next level, somebody I could talk to about how to deal with a competitor, somebody I could even talk to about how to manage their brother in the business. That's true, you're right. But honestly, and sometimes you have to pay for that service, but it is a good investment to arm yourself with the tools that you need as a business person to be successful.
A lot of students and past students has done into become the major in entrepreneurship. So later you'll be doing available to all. So entrepreneurship is that something that I started painting as a side gig, and I wish counting while I was at Yale.
And earlier, before the pandemic, going through a whole extent infused entrepreneurship across curriculum. Many of the other majors, like your major, I think you were people who in the IT degree program. We have people in criminal justice. But the important thing is not has to be, you don't want it. So whether it is a full course or whether exposing our students to some occasional seminars, to speakers, ideas like these, workshops like these, I think it is important for us to do.
the University of Belize, for the bachelor's courses from associates to the master's, they do have to take an e-skill course along with accounting and business finance, business management, etc. However, like for pharmacy, nursing, education, I do believe it's something that we should and can introduce, because teachers can become tutors. I mean, you can own your own pharmacy. So I do believe it's pivotal across all courses at UB. So I will make that recommendation.
While the mic is being passed, I also think it's important for us to include it in the minds of little children at the elementary school level, because if you don't know that you can do something other than be a policeman, doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is, then you need to start planting the little seeds in their head, because like Sylvia mentioned, I mean, entrepreneurship, I mean, necessity is the mother of invention, but entrepreneurship is the father. And so the reality is that that is how we'll move on. But if we don't know that it's possible, and honestly, when I was a child, I never knew that entrepreneurship was possible. My mother had to support us being a single disabled mother, so she knew that she could make bread and pizza and whatever. So it's again that we have to plant to see that when that is an opportunity.
Well, I just want to say good afternoon or good morning, everyone. And I just would like to say that it's really a blessing to be here in the presence of powerful women on the panel as well as within the audience. And I'm happy to be here and would like to ask. I'm currently a student at the University of Belize pursuing my bachelor's in finance. And the main reason for me to pursue that is because I wanted to understand the financial aspect of maintaining or running my own business in terms of entrepreneurship. So I had wanted to ask, what are some of the challenges that you as successful entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs in Belize, have experienced, and what would you recommend to women or youths in terms of growing and moving forward?
I'll start off, but the first one for me when I can remember, and this is a banking, and I guess goes back to the finance aspect of it, is really a credit card, right? Because I have to put down the $3,000 to get $3,000 credit. I found that in itself is something that is very limiting, because a credit card offers you that revolving fund. It's kind of like a loan, and that's how we see it as an entrepreneur. Say for instance, your area that you're looking at, finance. My clients look for people like you who would probably be able to run their accounting on a small basis in the beginning, kind of thing, and that would be your business. And all you need to start is a laptop, right? I mean, so that's all you need. $1,500, you get a laptop because you already have the internet, you have the corner in your house, and you can start running your business. Just gaining that finance is very difficult to get, and also the quality material. I think that entrepreneurs need to look at the quality material that will last for a very long time. And entrepreneurs also need to realize that you don't need everything. Everything doesn't have to be beautiful, a beautiful building. The overhead expenses can't be more than your operating revenue. So it's important, and I really believe in business plans and action plans. I know that a lot of people don't understand the need for, I believe in the registration of your company and your business and your name and getting it out there. Half of the businesses that we have gotten is only because we are in the black and white economy, not the gray economy. Because nowadays, if you want to work with any successful organization out there, they want to see your tax registration, they want to see your compliance forms, they want to see your registration sheet, they want to know that you're SSB compliant. And these are the things that put you in the market. And you have to start doing professional proposals that when they look at it, they're like, it tells the quality of the work that you're going to produce. But it goes back to what Sylvia said. Anything that a client asks you for, it's called product diversification, serial entrepreneurship, whatever you want to call it. But if somebody asks you for something, even if you don't know what it is, you're like, yes, we do that. I'm very busy right now, but can I call you back in half an hour? Because you can go Google it. I can remember the first time a client said, I want a slide deck. I'm like, Jesus Christ, what is a slide deck? And I said, yes, thank you. Can I call you right back? Because I can't take this call right now. I went up, Google slide deck. I did slide decks all along, just didn't know what the name was. And I remember one of my first jobs was when I got called and said, can you do a resettlement action plan according to PS5 regulations and World Bank standards? That's when, thank God, that Digi and Smart give us a lot of crackling and affect our phone service, because I said, can't hear you, can I call you back right now? Because I would really like to, can I call you back? And the person said, sure, but I need to hear back from you in 15 minutes because we really need to do it. And that's when I Googled it and I'm like, oh, okay, that's easy to do that. So the reality is that no matter what people ask you, whether you're making juice, and they say they want ginger with cocoa in the juice, make it. You know, just refine it. Stop saying and putting up all of these no's of what you cannot do. Entrepreneurship is about you realizing that your client is who you serve. Your client is smart enough to know that cocoa and ginger work together because they've had it somewhere before you, even though you have never fathomed the idea before. And try and make it and do it to the best of your ability and use your brain. And this is where we all come down to understanding that every course in college or education counts. Whether you are in cooking, your science counts. Your English counts in your marketing, your analytics counts, everything. And I know a lot of people say, well, I take this course, I never mean nothing to me. I can tell you that across my journey, even my jobs that I held, hold relevance to my today. I worked at Beltrade at the head of investment many, many years ago. That served a huge purpose for me. Wherever it was that I was, you know, I'm a lecturer at UB and at Gale and at UA, and it plays a role. Every single interaction that you have. Chris was one of my students. I hope that I was the one who impacted him and wanted to become an entrepreneur. I mean, the reality is take every piece of your journey as a person and realize that it plays its role. And guess what? If you don't know, ask somebody. People aren't stingy with ideas and recommendations and solutions. I mean, I learned about mentorship coaching, but modeling as you get older, that's our role, is important. But that's how I worked with Sylvia, where she was the board of the Youth Business Trust, where I help to coach, mentor, model, and help start up businesses. But can I tell you that my thesis that I wrote on as can initiatives like a youth business trust impact a country and make a difference was the topic of my doctoral study. I mean, so everything plays a role. Don't discredit anything you've ever done, from the selling of the pizza when I was a child. Entrepreneurship is everything you do, every part of your life, and so it has to be infused with quality, passion, and passion is how I pass I on, and putting your best foot forward with integrity and ethics and moral conviction at all times. So that's what entrepreneurship really is. So you all are an entrepreneur of yourself in your jobs right now, because you're selling you every day until when you decide to go and sell it for yourself outside. So all of us in this room are entrepreneurs. Whether you work for somebody or work for yourself, you are selling you every single day to keep your jobs, and that's a reality.
Well, that was a great answer again. I think that a lot of times we see entrepreneur as this glamorous job, and it's anything but glamorous. Just like she was saying, all of those things. I swear my job is problem solving, because that's what I do every minute of my life. Nobody ever, well, not nobody, but most people, 95% of people come to my office to tell me a problem, you know, and nothing prepares you for the problems, but like she says, the success is how you handle the problem and saying, yes, I'll handle it and I'll do this. You might be in your own personal world and then a bomb drops, and you know, and at first when I started, it really affected me and it brought me down, especially in my 20s, you know, oh my God, this is, and then you kind of grow that tough skin. Like now it's like, okay, breathe, deal with it, move forward. And so I think that very few things could prepare you. In school, they didn't prepare me for this problem solving that I've done, you know, and I think today they talked a lot about the financial limitations in Belize and information and all of that. And, you know, that affects, especially when you're starting a business, you know. So that's my answer.
This is not quite related, but I don't want to lose the point. It was mentioned yesterday, and I believe today in the statistics, that more women than men are graduating from universities. And Belize is no different. I believe the last time at UB, there was like a 69% women to men, and we are not much different at Galen. However, we still have the issue with women still earning lower than men. What is the reason? we need to start steering more women into the higher paying jobs, whether it's STEAM, whether it's STEM, but we need to start doing that. Many of our girls are still going into traditional low-paying jobs. Steer them into entrepreneurship, steer them into higher paying professions. And also, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge Madam Mayor of Belmopan, Sharon Palacio, with whom I worked for many years. But I'd like to salute her for the work that she's been doing since she's been the mayor in advancing and empowering women. Particularly, I've watched your She for She program, and I think that's a tremendous program. And so keep it up, Sister Sharon.
Pleasant good morning, everyone. I must say that I am extremely thankful to God that I made up my mind to be here, because there are a lot of reasons for me not to be here. And somehow I decided, all right, let me just make my way. Dr. Katus, you hit a point just now when it comes to men making, call it more money all the time. What I discovered when I went to work at the citrus company down south, I went there as, with my past, earning, I think it was 3,000 something at the National Committee for Families and Children. And I can never forget when the chief executive officer, he was from the US, Mr. Fleming, he asked me at my interview how much money I'm expecting, you know, how much he's going to pay me. That was at the end of the interview. And he told me he definitely wants to hire me. And I said to him, well, I'll lay $3,000. That's my reference point. And what I know for a fact in our country, can I speak without this mic? Everybody hearing me?
Yeah. Yes.
In our country, Belize, somehow we are very silent when it comes to how much we earn. I remember coming back from Cuba, and people don't speak about salaries. They don't want to say how much they're making, whether they are your relatives, your friends, or whatever. Somehow it's a secret. So for me, $3,000 was a lot of money. But I was their personnel manager. And when I saw salaries for the month ranging from 40,000 Belize come backwards, then I saw some people there who didn't even have degrees, and they were making huge money. So I said, oh, so this is the secret here. We don't know. So most times we go to interviews and we really don't know. Yes, they have skills, but you need to look at that skill and decide, you know, I value this and more. So I find that a lot of times when it comes to salaries, it is how well you can negotiate. So that I want to leave here for sure. Along with that, where we come from has a lot to do with how we think. Wherever I go, I speak about my mom, because my mom taught us a lot of things. I started being an income earner for my family from I was 8 years old. We had to sell to survive. I used to sell ideals. I'll never forget. Back home in PG. When we moved to the capital city, I was 11 years old. I was ashamed to sell, because in Belmopan, I didn't see a lot of people selling. But my mom insisted that we had to always have supplemental income, because as it was, my father was always busy doing other things. So I live every day knowing that supplemental income can make us can take us wherever we want to go. At this point, the same way how Dr. Katus acknowledged me, I want to acknowledge her as well. Because at the university, she was one person who never slowed me down, because I always had businesses along with the small UB salary, always doing something else. And she would say, good, go for it, you know? And I think, and there's where I heard Dr. Chamberlain saying just now, the mentee and the mentor, etc., etc. We have to surround ourselves with the right people at the right time, because there's where we get more support and we can validate ourselves even more. So we cannot be afraid to do things. And at all times, we must teach our younger ones the art of using their hands to do different things, make basket, do different things. At this point in my life, I'm about to own my own construction company because I realized that, hey, it's doable. And thanks for the She for She Summit. All these big women coming from abroad, a lot of them had their construction company. And I said, all right. So again, it's who we interact with. I won't take over the mic, Chris, and everybody else, but I'm happy to be here. And it's a pity that I didn't begin yesterday, and it's because we missed the date, really. And I heard somebody say we were supposed to bring along 2 persons. Is that so or no? Yes. Okay, so by God's grace, next week I'm going to bring along 2 guys. Thank you very much.
I want to second what Mayor Palazzo said in terms of Dr. Katoos, because as Dr. Chamberlain said, even if you're not an entrepreneur, by right we are entrepreneurs because we sell ourselves every day to our employer. And Dr. Katoos is very stellar in what she does, because I know our secretary to the president, Ms. Denise Robinson, was under her tutelage, and she still considers you a mentor. And I was mentored by her mentee. So I'm sure that you must give yourself kudos, Dr. Katoos, because she's not only a very, very good professional lecturer, but she's also stellar in terms of her mentorship. So it does not matter if you're starting as a secretary, as an educator, Dr. Katoos is across the board. So I want to give you kudos for that.
I feel her.
She bossing though.
But I like that she's not bossing.
Yes, I boss make you do the right thing.
She's not bossing.
Yes, I'm humbled and I thank you guys. But I do want to say one last thing, and I'm not going to say anything else. Dr. Chamberlain mentioned sell yourself. You have to decide what brand you are. What brand are you? What are you going to present to the public? What are you going to present to your children? And that brand, and you work on developing that brand, but you have to decide what is your brand. And most of us don't. You see, we put all kinds of pictures on Facebook. And we said, oh my gosh, isn't she the something, something? And even our social media should reflect our brand. Anyway, that's a whole other lecture.
Maybe we get final comments from the panelists before we close. Any final thoughts?
I'll just say, well, I'm very thankful and honored to be here today. I really feel so happy to be among so many powerful women, and amongst this panel, it's been really, really amazing. And thank you so much for inviting me.
I feel the same as she does, and I thank you all. But I want to go back to, I think, something that, again, that you mentioned earlier, is that in this room, I pretty much think I know all of you. Maybe we need to start to ensure, for inclusiveness reasons, that we start to bring new people into the room. Not that all of you aren't wonderful, and I know, but at the end of the day, honestly, to create critical mass, you have to create critical mass, and you want to bring in different and more, because the conversation is valuable, but it will go on ground that is very fertile. You have to figure out how to do that, and maybe that could be a takeaway or an action point or something that we're able to do. And at the same time, for all of you in the room who have referred and offered our services, for instance, to other people, and that is how we create that community. I thank you all as well, and thank you all for taking us and having us here today.
To just elaborate a little bit on Leon's point about bringing more people to the room, to the table, we have to also be intentional about intergenerational participation. We are, most of us, as Diana said, know each other. We have been at it for a long time. But what happens when we get tired, decide to exit? We need to bring more young, and it's great. And Julia, I just was so excited to see you. Monique, some of the others, Vicky, it's just been wonderful to see you guys. But we need to be, all of us need to be very intentional about intergenerational participation. And I am honored to be here, and thank you for having me.
I also want to say thank you for having me here. And my leaving comments is that we are as powerful as our own minds, and we must always project positivity. And whatever people say to you, always think that it starts with yourself and empower others, so that we can also be empowered. You don't lose your light if you light someone else's candle.
All right, please, just one more round of applause for the panel. Ladies. And with that, we come to the end of this morning's and this week's part of the workshop. I want to thank all the participants for taking time out of your schedule. It was a challenge planning this workshop to try and find a balance between where people may be able to attend without breaking up the entire workday. As I said yesterday, it's so glad to meet in person after so long. Thanks for making the effort to attend, and we look forward to seeing many of you next week, Wednesday. Same time, same place. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, sweetie. Bye, sweetie.